From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for tuning in. Well, coming up on this Tuesday edition, once again, the Biden administration is targeting Christian families, this time in the foster care system. A proposed new rule from the Department of Health and Human Services would mandate foster parents to elevate the federal government's LGBTQ agenda above the teaching of Scripture or stop helping children. Members of Congress, along with state attorneys general, are weighing in. We'll talk with Illinois Congresswoman Mary Miller, who is helping lead the congressional response. We'll also talk with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. In addition to working to protect Christian foster parents, General Bailey is also a part of a lawsuit filed last month by 33 states against Meta Platform, the parent of Facebook, for deliberately engineering its social media platforms to exploit children.
Today, I'm joining dozens of other attorneys general across the United States in a massive undertaking to once and for all hold Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and its CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, accountable for the deceptive practices and years of harm they have brought upon our young people.
That was Democrat New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin, who is leading the effort. We'll get the latest on this lawsuit from General Bailey in just a moment. And what happens when the U.S. Department of Education focuses more on wokeness than education? Well, stick around. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona will actually show us. Also, we've been talking about the weaponization of the federal government against people of faith. A blatant example was Mark Houck, a pro-life leader from Pennsylvania.
I see 5 federal agents on my porch with M16 guns pointed at me. You heard it. Ballistic helmets, ballistic shields, 2 battering rams, fully armored vests, and at least 10 marked and unmarked units on the property with PA state troopers behind their doors with pistols drawn, 2 SWAT guys at the back door, at least 20 of them total.
That was Mark Houck last month describing what took place at his home in eastern rural Pennsylvania. Acquitted unanimously of all charges, Mark is going on the offense. He's going to join us later to explain. And this should come as no surprise. Disney admitting to what happens when you trade your purpose for the pursuit of accolades from cultural leftists. You lose money. Disney shares are down nearly 17% over the last 5 years at a time when the Dow Jones moved up 38%. We're going to take a closer look at the bewildered world of Disney with Steve Sokup, Vice President and publisher of the Political Forum. Our word for today comes from John chapter 8. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. This is a powerful and enlightened declaration by Jesus. The path of this life is illuminated by knowing Jesus. That doesn't mean we see all the way to the end of our journey, but it does mean that we can see clearly what is before us and successfully navigate this path of life. It cannot be overemphasized, the effect of following Jesus, abiding in him through the instruction of his word, and the effect that that can have on our lives, keeping us from the pitfalls and keeping us on the straight and the narrow. That does not mean we won't have challenges and difficulties. We absolutely do, and we will. But they will not leave us without hope and purpose when Jesus is lighting the way. For more on our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible. Well, today is Giving Tuesday, and thanks to a $150,000 challenge match, you can double your impact, but only until midnight tonight. And if you choose to join FRC as a stand member for just $20 a month, you'll receive a free copy of George Barna's newest book, Raising Spiritual Champions, Nurturing Your Child's Heart, Mind, and Soul. So to take a stand for the next generation and partner with us on this Giving Tuesday, call us right now at 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008. We have FRC team members standing by to take your call. Again, that number 800-225-4008. Well, the Biden administration's Department of Health and Human Services has proposed a new rule that would target and penalize potential Christian foster parents by claiming they would not provide a safe or appropriate environment for children due to their biblical values. Now, what we've seen happening in the foster care system is a decline in families actually opening their doors to foster children. So we're actually at a crisis point. But here we have the federal government under the Biden administration wanting to actually push more families out of the foster care system. And given the crucial role that faith-based participants in the child welfare system play, why would the Biden administration pursue a policy that will only hurt vulnerable children? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congresswoman Mary Miller, who joined with several of her Republican colleagues to send a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services demanding a rescission of this proposed rule. She serves on the House Committee on Agriculture and the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. She represents the 15th Congressional District of Illinois. Congresswoman Miller, welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me on. It's another sad day under the rule of the Biden administration.
So how will this help children?
Well, it's not going to help children, but they've proven they don't care about children and they don't care about parents. They care about big government and they have an agenda of total control. They want people to be weak. This is damaging children, our next generation. It's going to cause, instability for these kids that need stable homes to be, placed in. I know in Illinois, they went after Catholic foster care, and thankfully the Catholic services backed out. I mean, it's bad. They refused to place children in same-sex households, and we lost 5,000 foster homes. It's very sad.
Yeah, so it's the children that suffer from this. But so to be clear for our viewers and our listeners, this rule that is being proposed by the Biden administration would mandate that foster parents and families utilize a foster child's identified pronouns, chosen name, and allow the child to dress in an age-appropriate manner that the child believes reflects their self-identified gender identity and expression. What this does is that it essentially says the only answer to this issue of gender dysphoria is to go along with the federal government's approach. If you're a Bible-believing Christian, and you believe that a child, as an individual, you're made in the image of God and that He created you, you can't teach the child that. That would run afoul of what the Biden administration is proposing.
I mean, it's a total attack on freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. And the other thing I can't get over is that the Biden administration is promoting the radical mutilation of a child's body to get the body to fit the mind instead of helping the child's mind fit the body. And no matter how much you mutilate the body, every cell in that child's body is either XX or XY. I mean, this is just, it's insane. They don't represent the American people. They're completely out of touch with the American people. American people don't support this.
So this rule implies, and I'm actually quoting from the letter that you sent to the Department of Health and Human Services, the rule implies that to not affirm a child's sexual orientation or gender identity is abuse. And this sets a dangerous precedent way beyond simply this rule for adoption.
Right. These people are perverts. Every person in the Biden administration's cabinet is just so radical. They don't represent the American people. And this Secretary Cardona has been promoting transgenders in girls' athletics and in their locker rooms, in their safe spaces. They are promoting just perverted literature in libraries, going after parents and schools that want to resist. And we're not getting that much done here in Congress, but one thing we can do is stop some of the bad agenda, and we are going to be loud about this. It's continual radicalization of our country. And I just want to tell the American people, don't be afraid to speak up and push back.
Well, essentially, what this is saying is that government under Joe Biden knows better than God what is best for children. Yeah. That's essentially what this administration is saying when it comes to the LGBTQ agenda, which they are. I've said this before. It is the unholy trinity for them. It is abortion, the LGBTQ agenda, and climate. It's in everything, everything that they do. You mentioned. Well, go ahead.
Apparently they believe it because Cardona misrepresented President Reagan and misquoted him.
Well, so I want to go to that. I want to play that clip because I know you serve on the Committee on Education, and this is very telling. This is what happens when the Secretary of Education has, the whole federal agency on education is more focused on bathrooms than obviously teaching history. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play this clip. This is the Secretary speaking earlier this month at this is a Western Governors Association in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, a very, very difficult place to go. Play clip number 4.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help.
Now, he didn't realize what he was saying. Obviously, he doesn't know his history. But I want to play the clip from Ronald Reagan where he used this a lot. He said this a lot. But play clip number 5.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Mary, how do you respond to that?
Well, he also said in this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. And I think that the American people have a very low view of government, and the, quote, experts that want to rule every aspect of their life, they can't even figure out basic biology. And I don't know, I've been rereading Deuteronomy 28 about the blessings and cursings on a nation if they obey or disobey God. And one of the curses is that he would put us put the nation in confusion. And, we're completely in confusion. We need to go back, repent, turn back to God, acknowledge that God's ways are perfect. He created us. He knows what's best. I always told my kids that the government is a necessary evil and it needs to be constantly kept at bay. It's like a cancer that wants to continue to grow. We need just accountability, and we need to hold these people accountable for trying to, just destroy our children, body, soul, and spirit.
So true. So true. And I tell folks all the time that what we do here in Washington, D.C. is just to keep the barbarians at bay so that the church and believers can do the work that they've been called to win hearts and minds of people. And this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Going after Christian foster parents, keeping them from being able to provide a safe environment for children. Mary, thanks for joining us today, and thanks once again for your leadership on Capitol Hill.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, folks, stick around. On the other side of the break, we're going to continue this conversation with the Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. Also, he's a part of a bipartisan lawsuit of attorneys general against Meta, the parent of Facebook, for intentionally designing their social media platforms to manipulate children. That's next. Don't go away.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there's the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday. The website, TonyPerkins.com. All right, more than 40 state attorneys general have sued Meta, the parent company of both Facebook and Instagram, for intentionally designing and deploying addictive features to its platforms that put youth at risk. Now, the harmful impact of these platforms on children and teens can include increased levels of depression and anxiety, increased hyperactivity, lack of sleep, and other mental health concerns. Now, did Meta lean into addicting children to its platforms while misleading the public about such harms? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. General Bailey, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you for having me on.
I want to get to this, and then I want to talk about the lawsuit, the letter that the attorneys general, I think about 18 or 19 of you, have sent to the Biden administration regarding Christian foster care families that, under a new rule being proposed by the Biden administration, would essentially be kept out of the foster care business.
Yeah, and both issues are about protecting children. And when it comes to the lawsuit against Meta, this is an important piece of litigation. We've exposed the manipulative practices of the Meta platform that designed features in order to make kids addicted. And lo and behold, screen time is bad for kids. And I think one of the problems here is that Meta has hidden their head in the sand and refused to obtain data or scientific studies to measure the negative, harmful impacts on kids, and deprive the public of access to that information. But that's in keeping with their practices. Look, when they were manipulating their platform to make kids more addictive, they were doing it to obtain personal information to maximize their profits, and it's putting kids at risk.
They knew this information internally, documents that reveal that they knew exactly what they were doing. And there are negative physical, psychological consequences that have come from this.
Yeah, absolutely. The mental and emotional impact of the addictive features of big tech social media platforms, specifically Meta in this instance, have been immediately impactful on children in a harmful way. And it violates the consumer protection laws of the state of Missouri when the platform is depriving parents of access to information necessary upon which to make good decisions about the health and safety of their children, when they're fraudulently attempting to make the kids addicted to the platform. That violates the law, and we're going to hold them accountable.
What's quite significant about this is that I think last month when it was first filed, it was about 32 states. Now we're up to over 40 This is a bipartisan effort. I mean, you've got Democrats, Republicans from, blue states, red states joining together in this effort to hold Meta accountable.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, child safety should be a bipartisan issue. I'm proud to have joined with colleagues, like-minded colleagues in other states that want to put the safety of children first and hold wrongdoers in the big tech social media world accountable. And certainly, we've seen a repeated pattern of behavior from Meta, not only to abuse children in this context and to deprive the public of access to information, but to violate our constitutional rights to free speech by, acquiescing to government censorship demands. So we have repeated instances of bad behavior here. And again, this is a full court press, all hands on deck approach to make sure we're holding this monolithic monopoly accountable.
So where does this go? As I said, the suit was filed last month. What's the status? What are the next steps?
Well, this is a 233-page complaint with detailed facts and allegations. And I'm here to tell you, we've got the evidence to back up the allegations, and we'll continue to pursue additional evidence through the tools of formal discovery. And we'll eventually likely file an amended petition based on additional allegations that we'll uncover. But right now we're in court and we want an injunction. We want the court to order Meta to stop using their features in such a way to make kids addicted, stop luring kids into these addictive features, and to post parental consent so that kids under 13, their parents know what these features, what's involved in these features, and can make decisions to protect the kids. We also think there should be some monetary compensation for the victims. We've got to build a fund to study this problem, figure out how bad it is, the negative emotional and mental impacts on kids, and make sure that they're treated and taken care of in the aftermath of this fraudulent behavior.
So I know this is focused on children who are vulnerable and they're being manipulated here, but this goes beyond the algorithms. The way this is set up, it affects more than children, does it not?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Look, it's intentionally designed to be addictive for children. One can certainly infer that they're doing the same thing to make it more addicted to adults as well. And I think you see the increased frequency that all people of all ages are spending on their addicted to these platforms on the screen. And so it's important to start unraveling this. Again, I think that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has been misinterpreted by the courts and has allowed this dangerous monopoly in big tech social media to exist. And this is just one more line of effort to dismantle that and right the wrongs of the past.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of big tobacco when they knew that nicotine, their product, was harmful, but they kept selling it, peddling it, and eventually they came tumbling down.
That's right. In the 1990s, there was evidence uncovered through a lawsuit similar to this that big tobacco was specifically targeting children and peddling an addictive product to children to the harm of children, then hiding the science and medicine that would have proven these harms. And I think this case is going to be very similar. And I think history will look back on this moment in time and celebrate that we took a stand to protect children against this pernicious behavior.
Very quickly, speaking of children, as I mentioned at the opening, that you, along with about 18 other attorneys general, have sent a letter to the Biden administration regarding this proposed rule on foster care families, essentially targeting Christian foster families. What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, we can't let Biden relegate Christian families to second-class citizen status. And that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to demand that if you want to be a foster placement and provide a loving home for a kid who's suffering from abuse and neglect and open your doors to that home, you've got to swear an oath of allegiance to a radical transgender ideology and reject your faith and your beliefs. And that's unconstitutional. It violates the First Amendment protection for religious freedom, and that's what we're fighting against. There are 13,000 kids in Missouri foster care that need loving homes. Why is President Biden trying to exclude so many of these Christian families from opening their doors to these kids in need?
Yeah, it's clearly not about the children. General Bailey, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for covering these important stories and for having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keep us posted. General Andrew Bailey of Missouri, fighting for families. All right, after the break, Mark Houck, the pro-life activist acquitted after the FBI targeted him in a pre-dawn raid of his house, has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Justice. He's fighting back, and he joins us after the break to give us the details. Stay tuned. More Washington Watch straight ahead.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Tony Perkins, good to have you with us. Now, we've watched as the Biden administration has weaponized the federal government to target and prosecute anyone who dares oppose their agenda. Now, among the most emblematic of such prosecutions was that of Mark Houck, Pennsylvania pro-life advocate who was arrested at his home for defending his son in an altercation outside of a Pennsylvania abortion facility. He was arrested in a highly politicized raid by the FBI more than a year after the incident, and he was facing more than a decade in prison. Now, Houck was acquitted unanimously on all charges. Houck has now filed a lawsuit against the FBI and the Department of Justice, noting both the faulty investigation and the use of excessive force by the SWAT team arresting him in front of his family. Joining me now to discuss this is Mark Houck. Mark, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be back with you.
So I wanted just to set the stage because, you know, it's been a while since you've been on and some people may have forgotten this account. There in Pennsylvania, local authorities refused to press charges on any of this. This thing was finished and done, right?
That's right. Within months of the original altercation, the DA didn't want to press charges. It was just a local problem handled by a private criminal complaint, which was totally dismissed in April of 2022. Which was 6 months after the incident, and then of course the raid, like you said, was almost a full year later.
And this was based upon the FACE Act. This was a law that goes back to the Clinton era, that the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Again, give us a quick overview of what happened that morning at your house.
Sure. Well, it was 6:30, 6:45 in the morning when a heavy bang came to my door, and the people outside, I didn't know who they were, could not see them, didn't announce themselves, just demanded that I open up the door. When I came to the door, I asked who they were. They said it was the FBI, banged again. I said, stay calm. I got 7 babies in here. And suffice to say, when I opened the door, there was 20 plus federal agents and PA law enforcement, state troopers on the lot, with M16 guns and pistols pointed at me, and then eventually at my wife and 7 children. And they took me into custody about 3 minutes later with no warrant issued or presented to us at the time.
No warrant. They just arrested you based upon what?
Well, they had a warrant, but they didn't present it. And when we asked them for it, they said, we're taking him with or without a warrant. So once I was placed into custody, they turned over a cover sheet to a warrant. So it was a warrant for my arrest under the FACE Act, as you said, but they weren't prepared to offer it to us when my wife demanded that she see it.
So we know now this went on to court. You had to defend yourself in court, but they threw it out. There was no basis for them to bring these charges against you in the federal court. Is that correct?
Well, they tried to make the case that there was a basis, but 12 jurors of my peers said there was no case, and unanimously, it has to be guilty or not. They decided that there was no evidence and motive was not there. So it was total abuse of prosecutorial misconduct, I should say. And the way they handled the investigation from the FBI put my children in harm's way, put my wife at risk, put us all in grave danger. And so that's why we're suing the government right now.
So I commend you for that, because this is one of the ways that we hold the government accountable that is out of control. So tell us about this lawsuit and what you've heard so far.
Sure. So we filed 2 weeks ago our preliminary complaint that the government now has 6 months to reply to. This is just an initial complaint that has to do with basically things that can be itemized, lost income, and quantitative data that we have as a result of the raid. Ultimately, it will move towards something that's more punitive on a second level. But right now, this is the first wave where we're demonstrating the type of traumatic effects and effects that were brought on to our family as a result of this poor and dangerous decision on the part of the federal government.
And look, I'm a former law enforcement. I'm a law and order guy. I know you are as well. But when they cross the line and they politicize our system of justice, we have to hold them accountable. And I do hope that you go beyond just the quantitative damages here done to your family to make it punitive. Someone should pay a price for what they did to you, because it wasn't just about you. This was a message that they were sending to pro-lifers across this nation.
100%, and we will do that, no doubt. Look, the government in an instant took away the innocence, stole the innocence of my children in an instant.
Yes.
And, you can't put a price on that. These children have nightmares to this day. These children are alarmed every time an unannounced person comes to the property. You cannot imagine what the long-term effects are going to be. You can only just hope that all goes well. But, look, we see the immediate effects as a result of it. And, we're going to hold the government accountable because it's necessary in order to prevent this from happening to future Americans. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing it.
And I want to commend you for, you could just kind of sweep this under the rug, put it behind you and say this is the past. But you're doing this not just for yourself. You're doing this for the rest of America by holding out of control government accountable. So Mark, I thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I'll encourage our viewers and listeners to be praying for you and for your children, that this will be something that the Lord will heal in your family, because I know it was certainly traumatic.
Amen to that. And you know what? Kids are resilient, but God's grace was sufficient during the raid and during the trial, and it's certainly ever more abundant right now post all this. So thanks so much, Tony. God bless your work.
Thank you, Mark. All right, folks, stick around. On the other side of the break, Disney admitting wokeness has cost them. That's next.
The world is hurting, streets are filled with crime, families are broken, sin is celebrated, and God is mocked. Everywhere we look, the wages of our sin are on full display. As Christians, we know that surrender to God's will is the solution to our biggest problems, but not everyone agrees. Even in church, we hear people say the most important thing is to be tolerant, that we shouldn't impose our morality on other people, and that loving our neighbor means celebrating what they do. But you can't do that. It's not that you don't love your neighbor, you do, but you care about God's opinion more than your neighbor's opinion, and this makes you different. In fact, sometimes it makes you feel alone, like you're the only one. But there is good news. You are not alone, not even close. Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these SageCons yourself, go to frc.org/SageCon and take the quiz to find out. The world is hurting, and we have the solution. We can't do it alone, but we can do it if we work together. That's what we're working toward every day. Join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
I'm often asked by people, Tony, how do you stay encouraged? How do you deal with all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., the negative policies that are attacking our faith, our family, and our freedoms? Well, you want me to let you in on the secret? It's called the Word of God. And that is why the Family Research Council embarked on Stand on the Word, a 2-year journey through the Bible. It's a chronological Bible reading plan with just 10 to 15 minutes a day. In 2 years, you will have covered the entire Bible. And to go along with this, Monday through Friday, I do a morning devotional that goes along with the reading of the day. It's all designed to encourage you on this journey because the Word of God, as the psalmist said, in my affliction, here's my comfort. Your Word gives me life. That is our source of strength. To find out more, go to tonyperkins.com or frc.org/Bible. And I invite you to join me every morning for our Stand on the Word Bible devotion.
All right, as I mentioned, today is Giving Tuesday. And thanks to a $150,000 challenge match, you can actually double your impact, but only until midnight tonight. So if you would like to be a partner with the Family Research Council and Washington Watch, and let me remind you, we are not like NPR. We don't get any government money. We're here because of folks like you all across this country who are partnering with us. So if you'll give us a call before midnight tonight, your contribution, your partnership will be doubled. So give us a call. We've got team members standing by to take your call, 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008 to partner with the Family Research Council. Earlier today, Disney CEO Bob Iger led a town hall for Disney employees where he admitted to smooth over another down year for the mouse that featured disappointing revenues and a sagging stock price. They're going to have to take some action. Well, after years of complaints from parents about the company's woke agenda and family programming, Disney admitted last week in its year-end SEC filings that it faces a, quote, misalignment with public and consumer taste and preferences, end quote. So, will Disney learn from its mistakes, or do they want a new public? And will others realize that the losses that Disney has encountered can be expected when an organization loses its understanding of its purpose? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Steve Sokup. He's the vice president and publisher of the Political Forum and the author of The Dictatorship of Woke Capital. Steve, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much for having me, Tony. I appreciate it.
So give us the rundown on the Disney town hall today.
Well, for those who are expecting major announcements from Bob Iger about any of a variety of issues, the town hall today was probably a disappointment. As I understand it, and granted I wasn't there, Iger was pretty staid and pretty complacent and fairly unwilling to make any sort of news in today's meeting. So I don't think that it was quite as newsworthy as it was built up to be, but that's not to say that the news around Disney hasn't been rather significant over the past several days.
Well, let's talk about some of that significant news. Let's talk about their year-end SEC filings and this misalignment with public and consumer taste. What is that? What are they saying?
Well, what they're saying is that their values different from what the values of their expected audience are, and that's a big deal. For a long time, Disney has professed to be the arbiter of values, and it turns out that the American public said, no thanks. We're not interested in allowing you to tell us what we should or should not believe. We're not interested in having you inculcate our children in what they should believe, and we're not going to spend our hard-earned money rewarding you for trying to do so.
So is this a political epiphany for Disney? Is it a revelation of truth?
It should be. I think Disney faces a couple of very serious problems in trying to recover from this misalignment. The first of these is the fact that it's in the business of selling values. Storytellers from Aesop to Jesus to, the Grimm brothers all the way forward have been in the business of using storytelling to transmit values and virtues from one generation to the next. And that's the business that Disney got in. If its values and virtues do not align with the public, then it becomes a serious problem. It's not as if they can simply say, you know what, we're going to go back to neutral. We're going to take politics and social policy out of our films. We're no longer going to tell stories that have values. I mean, that's the business they're in. They tell stories that have morals. They tell stories that are intended to transmit values from one generation to the next, and that makes it very difficult. The other problem that Disney has is its choice of leadership at this point. Disney is a political organization in large part because of Bob Iger. This didn't start this year. It didn't start in Florida. It didn't start with Governor Ron DeSantis. As I note in my book, The Dictatorship of Woke Capital, Bob Iger has been fighting a political battle, particularly against conservatives, for at least the last decade. He's fought the battle in North Carolina. He's fought the battle in Georgia. He's fought the battle in Florida. This is something that he believes firmly in. And the fight against Governor DeSantis in Florida that made so much news over the last several months was, in fact, Bob Iger's doing. If you look at what Disney has said about when it decided to get involved, it was when Bob Iger emailed the then current leadership and said, we have to do something about this law in Florida. We can't sit idly by and allow this to happen. And what Disney decided to do was fire Bob Chapek and bring back Bob Iger. So I think Disney has two serious problems. Their business model is one of selling values, and the man who runs the company is an aggressively and overtly political player.
So based on that, Steve, when what you talk about here is Disney is not just, it's not just entertainment. They've damaged their brand. They are the brand. And they've damaged that brand by what they've been doing over these years. And so it's not like people are going to say, oh, they've cleaned the place up, it no longer smells bad, and so I'm going to go back in. I mean, they have damaged their reputation. And to the point of Iger, I got a readout of the town hall meeting that they had. And he basically is blaming, having too many movies out. He's looking at the product, but there's no discussion of the brand. So I'm not quite sure that he fully understands how damaged the Disney brand really is.
Yeah, in order for the public's reaction to the politicization of Disney to have an impact on the way Disney functions, Bob Iger has to get it. In order for any of these businesses that have been punished by the public over the last year for being political, in order for any of them to make any headway in winning back their customers, they first have to get it. It's become clear, for example, that Target does not get it. That Target does not understand why its customers left it behind, why its customers got upset, why its customers started to boycott, and that they're doubling down on the tactics that in fact alienate their customers. The question is what.
Unpack that for just a moment. I know we're talking about Disney, but I think this is a prime example of what Target is doing. Not only are they not backing away, they're doing more of the same.
Yep, absolutely. Not only it was bad enough when they decided to politicize and sexualize the month of June, specifically because that's Pride Month. But now they're doing very much the same to Christmas. Their Christmas displays are reportedly very aggressively sexualized and very aggressively politicized. And that is a demonstration of the fact that the management of Target doesn't understand or is unwilling to accept the verdict delivered to it by the public.
So let's talk about that verdict for just a moment. Let's talk about the bottom line of these companies. I mean, how are they explaining this away to shareholders?
That's a good question. I don't think they can explain it away to shareholders without sounding crazy. In order to explain it away to the shareholders, they have to, as you implied at the beginning of this segment, citing Bertolt Brecht, they would have to say the public is wrong and we need a new public. We need to elect a new public, and that's not any way to function in a commercial industry such as Target's in, any way to function with shareholders. It's essentially courting the wrath of both customers and shareholders.
So, Steve, let me ask you this question. This is my sense that they feel like, oh, this is just a fad. It's going to blow over, and the public will forget all about this in another 6 months, and it'll be back to business as normal. But that doesn't appear to be happening. The public seems to be fixed on this. When they're forcing something down the throat of the public that the public doesn't want, they're not buying it.
No, I think the public is exhausted with politics being everywhere and in everything. It's not that Target is left-wing. It's not that Bud Light embraced left-wing values. It's not that Disney is liberal. They are, and in fact they have. But that's not the point. The point is that people are tired of having politics shoved down their throat at every possible occasion. They're just exhausted with the whole thing, and it's not something that's going to go away. As long as they keep doing this is something that the public is going to react to negatively.
So how long will these businesses survive?
Well, I think they survive in one form or another for a long time. The question is, how long does management survive? How long do the boards and the shareholders agree to keep Bob Iger on, for example, if he doesn't get it, if he continues to pursue the agenda that got Disney into trouble in the first place? I don't think Bob Iger is the man for the job. He may have built Disney into a giant entertainment company, and he may be the nicest man in entertainment, as everybody says, but he is not the man for the job at this point. And eventually, the Disney board and Disney shareholders are going to get tired of what he's doing and his inability to recognize that he's a big part of the problem.
So, Steve, when you look at, you mentioned Target, they're doubling down, their stock is down. Disney, as I pointed out, while the Dow Jones up 38% over the last 5 years, they've dropped 17% in their value. How long will shareholders tolerate this type of, wokeness trumping profit? I mean, that's why you invest in a company. I mean, you invest in a company to make money, not to, at least most people, not to advance a set of values that are contradictory to your own.
Well, I think we're starting to see a big part of that verdict already. I mean, the share value of Disney isn't dropping because profits are down. It's dropping because people are selling the stock. There are more sellers than there are buyers. So I think shareholders are already starting to issue their verdict on Disney, and it's not a very favorable one. As far as the board of directors goes, I don't know. If it were up to me, if I were running the board of directors of Disney, I would say Bob Iger's done. But clearly, it's not up to me. I would say they give him at least another year. If next year is as bad as this year was, I think that he has to be concerned about being pushed out into a second retirement.
So, Steve, final question for you. Is it your sense that other corporations are watching this? I mean, you mentioned Bud Light, we talked about Target, Disney. Are they sitting back taking notes on this? And are we seeing some corporations kind of back away from this political, cultural engagement as a result?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the general zeitgeist in American business is to depoliticize as much as possible at this point. Sometimes that's going to be very difficult, given positions that have been taken just in the last 3, 4, 5 years. But I think that a great many executives and managers have seen just how potent customer reaction can be. It used to be the case that nobody feared conservative consumers very much because conservative boycotts always failed. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that even though these are not organized boycotts, that they have been very effective and that they have certainly sent a message to the companies that have been affected and to others who might go down that same road. As you know, to use the Godfather analogy, these guys are Luca Brasi swimming with the fishes. They're the warning to the rest of business that if you push this too far, you will end up the same way. So I think that what we're starting to see among a great many corporate leaders is a desire simply to get out of the politics business.
And your recommendation to consumers would be to continue to vote with your dollars and avoid those businesses that contradict your values.
Yep, vote with your dollars and invest with your dollars. Invest your values as well.
All right, Steve Soukup, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the work you do on the corporate front.
Thank you very much for having me, Tony. I appreciate it.
All right, Steve Soukup. You can find out more, go to TonyPerkins.com. I find this really interesting and encouraging as we see the consumers responding to this. And, you know, whether or not these corporations get it, I don't know. I mean, you look at Disney, I don't know that they'll do a course correction, but you know what? We can live without Disney. But I'm concerned about what I see in the federal government doing the same thing. We talked about this yesterday with the Department of Defense seeking another $114 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Now, we can live without Disney, but we cannot live without a military that, or with a military that's lost its purpose. And our military's purpose is not to advance DEI. It is to be a lethal force to keep this nation safe. And this is why we've got to speak out so clearly against this woke agenda. Destroys businesses and leads countries down the wrong path. This will only weaken our military even more as this Biden administration continues to seek this nonsense that corporate America is now having to reckon with in terms of lost profits. Fortunately, the government just prints more money. But there comes a point when our military, when it's weakened and can't defend this country, it'll be too late. It's why we must pray, we must vote, and we must stand. Folks, thanks so much for being with us today. And until next time, I leave you once again with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything that you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you've taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.